Commander Zektar pressed his scaled hand against the broken console, watching the last emergency lights flicker and die. The bridge of his ship. Silent dawn looked like a battlefield. Sparks flew from damaged panels while smoke filled the air, with a bitter taste. Bodies of his crew lay scattered across the floor, some still breathing but barely alive. 3 days ago, everything had been different. The Coalition fleet had been strong and proud as they patrolled the Rigel sector. Over 800 ships from 3 different alien races working together. The Velthari Empire brought their fast attack cruisers with crystal weapons. The Nexus Collective sent their massive carriers filled with robot fighters. The Korth Dominion provided heavy battleships with thick armor and powerful guns. Zektar had commanded one of the finest ships in the fleet. The Silent Dawn carried 200 crew members from his own species, the Hegemony. They were reptilian beings with tough scales and sharp minds for war. For 50 years he had served in space battles across the galaxy. He thought he had seen every kind of enemy the universe could throw at them. He was wrong. The enemy came without warning. No advanced scouts reported them. No long-range sensors detected their approach. One moment the Coalition fleet was moving through empty space between star systems. The next moment death surrounded them on all sides. The enemy ships were unlike anything in their military databases. They moved like liquid metal through space, changing shape as they flew. Their weapons cut through the strongest armor like it was paper. Worse than their technology was their method. They did not fight like normal armies that wanted to win quickly. They fought like hunters who enjoyed watching their prey suffer. The battle lasted 18 hours. Zektar watched through his ship's cameras as enemy vessels picked apart the Coalition fleet piece by piece. They would disable a ship's engines first, leaving it helpless to move. Then they would destroy its weapons so it could not fight back. Finally, they would cut through the hull in precise places, letting air leak out slowly so the crew would die over many hours instead of quick death. The Silent Dawn took hit after hit. Enemy beams sliced through their shield generators. Explosions rocked the ship from bow to stern. The engineering deck caught fire and filled with toxic gas. Half the crew died in the first hour of fighting. The other half fought on until their ammunition ran out and their weapons went silent. By the end of the first day, over 600 Coalition ships were destroyed or crippled. The enemy had lost maybe 20 vessels. It was not a battle anymore. It was slaughter. That was when Admiral Vorthak of the Velthari made the decision that would haunt Zektar's final hours. The Coalition command sent out the retreat order. All ships that could still move were to jump to hyperspace immediately. All damaged vessels were to be abandoned. The surviving fleet would fall back to defensive positions and report the disaster to their home governments. Zektar understood the logic. In the face of such overwhelming enemy superiority, retreat was the only rational choice. Staying to help the crippled ships would only add more casualties to an already terrible loss. Military doctrine was clear across all 3 species. Sometimes sacrifice was necessary for the greater good. But understanding the logic did not make it hurt less when he watched the last functional ships of his fleet disappear into hyperspace, leaving him and thousands of other wounded warriors to die alone in the cold vacuum of space. The Silent Dawn drifted among the wreckage with over 40 other destroyed vessels. Some ships had lost all power and floated dark and silent. Others still had emergency systems running, their distress beacons sending out weak signals that no one would ever answer. The enemy had vanished as quickly as they appeared, apparently, satisfied with their work of destruction. Zektar made his way through the damaged corridors of his ship, checking on survivors. He found 12 crew members still alive, huddled in the medical bay where Dr. Seklon was trying to treat injuries with limited supplies. The ship's life support system was failing. The main power core was cracked and leaking radiation. They had maybe 6 hours of breathable air left. In the communications room, he found Operator Nixtar still at her post despite a broken arm and burns across her face. She looked up when he entered, her large eyes filled with pain and determination. "Commander," she said with a weak voice, "I have been monitoring signals from other ships. There are survivors scattered across the debris field. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands." Zektar nodded slowly. "How many ships have working transmitters?" 37 are still sending distress signals, but the power levels are dropping fast. Most will go silent within the next few hours. He stared at the communication console, thinking about all those beings dying slowly in the darkness. Velthari warriors who had fought beside his people for decades. Nexus robots with artificial minds but real loyalty. Korth soldiers who never backed down from a fight. All of them abandoned by their own leaders because saving them was not practical. Operator Nixtar, he said finally. Can you boost our transmitter power? She checked her instruments. Yes, sir. But it will drain our remaining battery power. We will lose life support even faster. Do it. Send out a general distress beacon on all frequencies, not just to our own fleets but to anyone who might be listening. Sir, the coalition forces have already retreated. No one is coming back for us. Sektar looked at her with tired eyes. I know, but maybe someone else is out there. Someone who thinks differently than we do. Someone who would not leave warriors to die alone. As the operator boosted their signal and sent it out into the vast emptiness of space, Sektar allowed himself one last hope. Somewhere in the galaxy there might be a species that valued life over military efficiency. A people who would risk themselves to save strangers. It seemed impossible, but impossible was all he had left. Captain Jake Morrison was drinking his morning coffee when the distress signal reached the Pioneer's heart. The human exploration ship was 3 days into a routine survey mission in the outer reach, mapping star systems that no Earth vessel had visited before. It was quiet work, the kind that let a crew relax between the tedious hours of collecting data on empty planets and dead moons. Jake liked the peaceful missions. After 12 years commanding various ships for the human exploration fleet, he preferred discovering new worlds to fighting wars. The Pioneer's heart carried 43 crew members, all scientists, engineers, and support staff. They had no military training and only basic defensive weapons. Their job was to explore and learn, not to fight. The signal came through the communication array while Jake was reviewing the day's survey schedule. Communications officer Karen Walsh called him to the bridge, her voice tight with concern. Captain, you need to hear this, Karen said as Jake entered the bridge. We picked up a distress beacon about 20 minutes ago. It's weak and broken. But the computer managed to piece together most of it. Jake moved to the communication station and put on the headset. The voice that came through was clearly not human. It spoke in a language the universal translator struggled to understand. But the emotion behind the words was clear. Fear, pain, and desperate hope. The translator says it's from someone called Commander Sektar, Karen explained. He's reporting massive casualties from a battle. Multiple species involved. Thousands of wounded and dying scattered across a debris field. Jake frowned and checked the coordinates. The location was uncomfortably close to human space, only 6 light-years from the outer colonies. How long ago did this happen? Based on the signal delay, about 4 days ago. Captain, there's something else. The translator picked up references to an unknown enemy force, something that completely destroyed a large fleet. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Humanity had been exploring space for over a century, but they had never encountered another intelligent species. The idea that there were not only aliens out there, but aliens fighting wars with weapons that could destroy entire fleets, changed everything. Get me the senior staff, Jake ordered. Emergency meeting in the conference room in 10 minutes. The conference room was cramped with 6 people sitting around a small table. Jake had called in his most trusted officers to help him make a decision that could affect the future of human space exploration. Dr. Lisa Bennett, the ship's chief medical officer, was a woman in her 40s with graying hair and sharp eyes. She had served on exploration ships for 15 years and had never encountered a medical emergency she could not handle. But the idea of treating alien injuries was something entirely new. We have to help them, Lisa said after listening to the translated distress signal. I don't care what species they are, people are dying out there. Commander Amy Sullivan, Jake's first officer, was more cautious. She was younger than Jake, but had excellent judgment and always thought through the practical side of any decision. Captain, we don't know anything about these aliens. We don't know their biology, their technology, or their intentions. This could be a trap, Chief Engineer Tony Rodriguez disagreed. The signal is genuine. I've analyzed the transmission patterns and power signatures. This is real emergency equipment running on backup power. Someone is really in trouble. Navigation. Officer Ryan Cooper pulled up a star chart on the conference room display. Even if we decide to help, we have major problems. The debris field is 6 hours away at maximum speed. We don't know what we'll find when we get there. And our ship wasn't designed for large-scale rescue operations. Jake studied the faces around the table. These people had volunteered for exploration duty because they wanted to discover new things and push the boundaries of human knowledge. But none of them had expected first contact with alien life to happen like this. What are the risks? Jake asked. Amy pulled up a tactical display. Unknown enemy forces in the area. Our ship has minimal weapons and no armor. If whatever destroyed that alien fleet is still around, we wouldn't last 5 minutes in a fight. Ryan added more concerns. Resource problems too. The Pioneer's Heart has life support for 50 people maximum. If we pick up survivors, we'll overwhelm our systems. Food, water, air, medical supplies. We don't have enough for a large rescue operation. Tony leaned forward. I can push the environmental systems, maybe 20% over capacity for a short time. But that's still only 60 people total, and it would be dangerous. Dr. Bennett shook her head. We can't think about this in terms of numbers. These are living beings who need help. We took an oath to preserve life wherever we find it. Lisa, I respect that, Amy said. But we also have a responsibility to our own crew. If we get ourselves killed trying to help, we won't save anyone. Jake listened to the debate for another 10 minutes, but he already knew what his decision would be. The exploration fleet had sent them out here to make contact with whatever they found in the unknown regions of space. Well, they had found something. The question was whether humanity would make its first impression as a species that helped others, or as one that looked the other way when people needed help. I'm going to ask for volunteers, Jake said finally. Anyone who wants to stay behind can take the shuttle to the nearest human outpost. But I'm taking this ship to those coordinates. We're going to find out what happened to that fleet, and we're going to help whoever we can. Amy looked at him with concern. Captain, the regulations are clear. We're supposed to avoid contact with unknown species unless we have military backup. The regulations were written by people who never heard aliens calling for help, Jake replied. Sometimes you have to do what's right instead of what's safe. He stood up and looked around the table. We have 2 hours to prepare. Lisa, start working on medical protocols for unknown biology. Tony, figure out how to expand our life support systems. Ryan, plot the fastest course to those coordinates. Karen, keep monitoring that signal in case we can learn more. As the meeting broke up, Jake remained in the conference room, staring at the star chart. In 6 hours, he would either make history as the human who established peaceful first contact with alien civilizations, or he would get his entire crew killed, trying to help strangers from another world. Either way, he could not ignore the voice. In that distress signal, someone was dying out there and they had asked for help. That was enough. The Pioneer's heart dropped out of hyperspace into hell. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge, staring at the main display screen in shock. The debris field stretched out before them like a graveyard of metal and dreams. Hundreds of alien ships floated dead in space, some torn completely apart. Others listing with their hulls cracked open like broken eggs. The destruction was beyond anything he had imagined. My God, whispered Navigation Officer Ryan Cooper. What could do this? Jake counted the wrecks on the scanner. Over 300 ships of different sizes and designs. Some were sleek and elegant with curved hulls that looked like they were built for speed. Others were massive and blocky, clearly designed for heavy combat. All of them were now twisted wreckage drifting in the cold vacuum of space. Captain, Communications Officer Karen Walsh called out. I'm picking up 42 active distress signals. Emergency power only. Most of them are very weak. Life signs? Jake asked. Dr. Lisa Bennett was studying the medical scanners. It's hard to tell with alien biology, but the computer is detecting thousands of heat signatures that could be survivors. They're scattered across dozens of ships. Jake made his decision quickly. All hands, this is the captain. We are beginning. Immediate rescue operations. All departments report to your emergency stations. We have people dying out there and we're going to save as many as we can. Chief Engineer Tony Rodriguez was already working at his station. Captain, I'm reading 3 different types of power systems in those wrecks. I can jury-rig power transfer, cables, but it's going to take time to figure out their technology. Do it, Jake ordered. Ryan, take us to the nearest ship with life signs. Karen, try to establish contact with survivors. Let them know help is coming. The first ship they approached was smaller than the Pioneer's heart, with a hull that looked like it was made from some kind of crystal material. Scorch marks covered its surface and a large hole in the side vented frozen atmosphere into space. Lieutenant Sam Parker was in charge of the docking operation. He was a young officer with steady hands and quick thinking, exactly the kind of person Jake needed for this job. Captain, their docking port is damaged, but I think I can seal our airlock to their hull breach. Make it happen, Jake said. 20 minutes later, Sam led a 3-person team through the airlock into the alien ship. They carried emergency air supplies, medical equipment, and portable lights. The ship's interior was dark and cold, filled with the metallic smell of burned electronics. The first alien they found was unlike anything from Earth's imagination. It was tall and thin, maybe 7 feet high, with pale skin that seemed to shimmer like crystal. Its face was humanoid, but with large eyes that reflected their flashlight beams. It was conscious but clearly hurt, with what looked like burns across its chest. Easy, Sam said, not knowing if the being could understand him. We're here to help. The alien spoke in a musical language that the translator couldn't handle. But when Sam offered it water from his emergency supplies, the being accepted it, gratefully. Its large eyes showed surprise and something that might have been hope. Dr. Bennett came through the airlock with her medical team. She had never treated an alien before, but she approached the wounded being with the same calm professionalism she used with human patients. I don't know your biology, she said, but pain is pain. Let me see what I can do. Over the next hour, they found 12 more survivors on the crystal ship. All of them were injured, some critically. The humans worked frantically to stabilize them and move them to the Pioneer's heart. It was difficult work made harder by the language barrier and the complete lack of medical knowledge about alien anatomy. The second ship they docked with was completely different. It was huge and angular, built like a fortress. The survivors they found inside were shorter than humans but much broader, with thick scales and powerful-looking arms. They seemed to be warriors, even the wounded ones maintaining discipline despite their injuries. Commander Zektar was among this group. When the human rescue team found him on the bridge of the Silent Dawn, he was barely conscious, but still trying to coordinate with other survivor groups. Sam helped him to his feet and Zektar stared at the human with confusion. Who are you? Zektar asked in his own language. The translator finally kicked in, converting his words to broken English. Why do you help? We are strangers. That's what people do, Sam replied. When someone needs help, you help them. Zektar looked at Sam as if he had said something impossible. In his long military career, he had never heard of one species risking themselves to save another without any hope of reward or alliance. As the rescue operations continued, the Pioneer's heart began to fill with alien survivors. The ship's corridors were crowded with beings from 3 different species, all wounded, all confused about why these strange creatures were helping them. Dr. Bennett set up a medical station in the cargo bay. She had never faced such a challenge before. Each species seemed to have completely different biology. What helped one might kill another. She had to learn alien anatomy through trial and error while trying to keep critically injured patients alive. Tony Rodriguez worked around the clock to keep the ship's systems running. The life support was pushed far beyond its limits. The air recyclers were working overtime. The food synthesizers were running constantly. The power grid was strained to the breaking point. Captain, Tony reported after 6 hours of continuous work. We're at 180% of normal capacity. I can't push the systems much harder without risking complete failure. Jake looked around the crowded ship. They had rescued over 90 alien survivors so far, but the scanners showed hundreds, more still trapped in the wreckage. The Pioneer's heart was already dangerously overloaded, but there were still people dying out there who needed help. "How many more can we take?" Jake asked. "Maybe 10 more if we shut down non-essential systems," Tony said. "But Captain, we still have a 3-week journey back to human space. I don't know if we can keep this many people alive for that long." Jake stood in the middle of his transformed ship, surrounded by aliens who should have been enemies helping each other survive. A tall Velthari was sharing water with a wounded Korth warrior. A Nexus engineer was working alongside Tony to repair damaged equipment. These beings had probably been fighting each other for years, but now they worked together because they had learned something from the humans. "We'll find a way," Jake said. "We didn't come this far to leave people behind now." Captain Jake Morrison listened to the survivor testimonies with growing horror. The aliens they had rescued were finally able to communicate clearly through the ship's translation systems, and the stories they told painted a picture of an enemy, unlike anything the galaxy had ever faced. Commander Zektar sat in the ship's conference room, his scaled hands trembling as he spoke. The tough warrior who had commanded hundreds of soldiers now looked broken and afraid. "They call themselves the Silence," he said. "We do not know where they come from or what they want. They just appear and destroy everything." Dr. Lisa Bennett had treated Zektar's wounds, but she could not heal the damage to his mind. "Commander, can you tell us about their technology, their weapons?" Zektar closed his large reptilian eyes. "Their ships changed shape like living things. Our sensors could not lock onto them. Their weapons cut through our strongest armor like it was paper, but the worst part was not how they killed us. It was how they chose to kill us." A Velthari survivor named Lithara joined the conversation. She was one of the tall, crystal-skinned beings, and her musical voice carried pain that needed no translation. "They did not fight to win quickly. They fought to make us suffer. They would disable our engines first so we could not escape. Then they would destroy our weapons so we could not fight back." "Why?" asked Jake. "What did they gain from making you suffer?" Lithara shook her head. "We do not know. They seemed to enjoy our fear. Some of our ships tried to surrender, but the Silence ignored all attempts at communication. They just continued their work of destruction." A third survivor, a Nexus engineer named Unit 7749, provided more technical details. The Nexus were artificial beings, robots with advanced computer minds. Unit 7749 spoke in precise mechanical tones. "Analysis of enemy tactics suggests systematic elimination protocols. They target life support systems to cause slow death rather than quick destruction. Estimated survival time for disabled vessels 6 to 8 hours. This appears to be intentional." Jake felt sick. The enemy was not just winning battles. They were torturing entire populations before wiping them out. "How many ships did they destroy?" "The Coalition fleet numbered 837 vessels," Zektar replied. 44 ships escaped. All others were destroyed or disabled. The numbers were staggering. Jake tried to imagine a battle where over 700 ships were lost in a single engagement. The entire human fleet had maybe 200 vessels total, and most of those were exploration ships like the Pioneer's Heart. "Commander," Jake said carefully, "do you know where the Silence went after the battle?" Zektar looked at him with fear in his eyes. "Our intelligence suggests they are moving toward the Galactic Rim. They follow a pattern, destroying one system at a time, always moving in the same direction." Jake felt cold. The Galactic Rim was where human space was located. Earth and all the human colonies lay directly in the path of this unstoppable force. "How long do we have?" Unit 7749 calculated. "Quickly. Based on observed movement patterns and estimated time between attacks, the Silence will reach the edge of your territory in approximately 4 solar months." 4 months. Jake stared at the conference room table, trying to process the information. Humanity had 4 months to prepare for an enemy that had just destroyed a fleet 8 times larger than anything Earth could field. Dr. Bennett made a discovery that made everything worse. She had been treating survivors who had direct contact with the Silence during the battle. These aliens suffered from more than physical wounds. They had psychological trauma that seemed to affect their minds in ways that crossed species barriers. "Jake, you need to see this," Lisa called him to the medical bay. She was examining a Korth warrior who had been found floating in space near a destroyed ship. The warrior was physically healthy but mentally shattered. "What happened to him?" Jake asked. "He was exposed to some kind of weapon that the Silence uses," Lisa explained. "It doesn't just kill the body, it attacks the nervous system directly. The few survivors who experienced it described the same thing across all 3 species. Perfect, conscious awareness of death while being unable to do anything about it." Jake looked at the Korth warrior, who was staring at nothing with empty eyes. "Is he going to recover?" "I don't know. This isn't just trauma from battle. This is something that was done to him deliberately. The Silence has weapons that can break minds as well as bodies. The implications were terrifying. An enemy that could destroy fleets was bad enough. An enemy that tortured its victims before killing them was worse. But an enemy that had weapons designed specifically to cause maximum psychological suffering suggested something truly evil." Jake called another meeting with his senior staff and the alien leaders. The Pioneer's heart was still dangerously overloaded with refugees, but now they faced a bigger problem. The intelligence they had gathered revealed that humanity was next on the Silence's list, and Earth had no idea what was coming. "We have to get back to human space immediately," Commander Amy Sullivan said. "Earth needs this information to prepare their defenses." "What defenses?" asked Chief Engineer Tony Rodriguez. "We're explorers, not warriors. The human fleet is designed for research and colonization, not fighting wars against an enemy like this." Navigation Officer Ryan Cooper pulled up star charts showing human territory. "It gets worse. Most of our colonies are spread out across dozens of systems. If the Silence attacks multiple targets at once, we won't be able to defend them all." Jake studied the faces around the table. His crew looked frightened and overwhelmed. The alien survivors looked defeated and hopeless. Everyone understood that they were carrying news that would change the course of human history, and not for the better. "There's something else," Jake said quietly. "We're not just carrying information back to Earth. We're carrying witnesses. These survivors are the only beings in the galaxy who have fought the Silence and lived to tell about it." Sektar nodded slowly. "Your species will need to know everything we learned from our defeat. How they fight, how they think, what weapons they use, every detail could be important." "But will it be enough?" asked Lithara. "Our combined fleet had superior numbers and advanced technology. We had been preparing for war for decades, and they destroyed us in hours." Jake looked around the room at humans and aliens working together despite their differences. In the past week, species that had never met before were sharing resources, knowledge, and hope. Maybe that was humanity's advantage. Maybe the thing that would save them was not better weapons or stronger ships, but the simple idea that everyone deserved to live. "I don't know if it will be enough," Jake said honestly. "But we have something the Silence might not expect. We have you. And we have learned that when different people work together, they can accomplish things that seem impossible." The return journey to human space would take 3 weeks with an overloaded ship and failing systems. But they were carrying more than refugees now. They were carrying the seeds of an alliance that might be the galaxy's only hope against the darkness that was coming. The Pioneer's heart was dying, and Captain Jake Morrison refused to accept it. For 2 weeks, the overloaded ship had struggled through space carrying nearly 200 survivors in a vessel designed for 50. The life support systems were failing. The air recyclers could not keep up with demand. Food supplies were running dangerously low. The power grid was pushed beyond all safety limits. Chief Engineer Tony Rodriguez brought Jake the latest damage report. His face was exhausted from working 18-hour shifts to keep the ship functional. "Captain, we're losing the battle. The environmental systems are breaking down faster than I can fix them. We have maybe 4 days of air left." Jake stood in the crowded corridor outside the medical bay, watching humans and aliens work together despite the impossible conditions. Dr. Lisa Bennett was teaching a Velthari healer how to treat human injuries while learning alien medicine in return. Communications Officer Karen Walsh was working with a Nexus engineer to improve the translation systems. Everywhere he looked, different species were cooperating in ways their governments had never imagined. What if we don't fight the battle? On their terms, Jake asked. Tony looked confused. Sir, every other species treats damaged ships as total losses. They abandon them and move on. But we're humans. We fix things. Lieutenant Sam Parker overheard the conversation and joined them. He had been working with alien survivors to understand their technology. Captain, are you thinking what I think you're thinking? Jake nodded. There are 43 disabled ships in that debris field. Some of them just need power and basic repairs to become functional again. Instead of cramming everyone into one dying ship, why not bring several ships back to life? Tony's tired eyes suddenly showed interest. The alien survivors know their own technology better than we do. If we work together... It's crazy, Sam said. But it might work. The idea went against everything the alien survivors had been taught about space warfare. When Commander Zektar heard the proposal, he stared at Jake as if the human had suggested flying to the nearest star by flapping their arms. Captain Morrison, with respect, disabled ships are abandoned for good reasons. The cost of repair is greater than building new vessels. It is basic military logic. Maybe that's the problem, Jake replied. You're thinking like military commanders. We're thinking like engineers. Lithara, the Velthari survivor, was more open to the idea. In theory, several of our ships could be repaired. The hulls are intact and the main system suffered only minor damage, but we lack the resources for such an undertaking. Unit 7749, the Nexus engineer, ran calculations in its computer mind. Probability of successful repair operation, approximately 37%. Risk of total mission failure, 63%. Recommendation, maintain current course. Jake looked around the room at faces from 4 different species. What if I told you the current course has a 0% chance of success? We can't keep 200 people alive in this ship for another week, let alone get them safely to human space. Dr. Bennett supported the plan. Jake's right. I'm losing patients every day because we don't have proper medical facilities. If we could get the medical bay on one of those alien ships working, I could save lives that we're going to lose otherwise. The debate continued for hours, but Jake had already made his decision. The next morning, he ordered the Pioneer's Heart to return to the debris field. Half the crew would remain aboard to maintain life support for the most critically injured survivors. The other half would form repair teams to bring dead ships back to life. The first ship they targeted was a Velthari cruiser called the Crystal Dawn. It had suffered engine damage and lost main power, but the hull was intact and most systems were undamaged. Sam Parker led a team of humans and Velthari survivors to assess the repairs needed. Working inside an alien ship was like solving a puzzle where half the pieces were missing, and the other half were designed by completely different minds. Human engineering was based on practical, straightforward design. Velthari technology was elegant and artistic, with power flowing through crystal matrices that responded to harmonic frequencies. But the mixed teams found ways to bridge the gap between different approaches to engineering. Tony Rodriguez discovered that human power couplers could interface with Velthari crystal systems if they modified the frequency output. A Velthari engineer named Silthara showed the humans how to repair damaged crystal matrices using techniques that seemed more like art than science. After 3 days of intensive work, the Crystal Dawn came back to life. Its lights flickered on and its engines hummed with power. The survivors who had worked on the repairs cheered together, humans and aliens celebrating their shared success. The second ship was more challenging. The Korth battleship Iron Thunder had suffered massive damage to its armored hull, but its internal systems were built to military standards that could survive almost anything. Commander Zektar worked alongside human engineers to restart the ship's massive fusion reactors. Korth technology was brutally efficient, designed for war and built to last. Everything was heavily armored and redundant. Where human systems might fail if one component broke, Korth systems had 3 backups for every critical function. The humans learned to appreciate the alien approach to engineering, while the Korth began to understand human creativity in solving problems. Unit 7749 led the effort to repair a Nexus carrier called the Logic Prime. The artificial being worked with human computer specialists to restore the ship's vast network of interconnected systems. Nexus technology was based on distributed intelligence, with every system connected to every other system in a web of constant communication. The humans found the Nexus approach fascinating but overwhelming. How could anyone repair a ship where changing one component affected dozens of other systems? But Unit 7749 was patient, explaining the logic behind each connection until the humans began to understand the beauty of the integrated design. After 10 days of non-stop work, they had restored 4 ships to partial functionality. The survivors were no longer crammed into one dying vessel. They were spread across a small fleet of patched-together ships, each one representing cooperation between species that had never worked together before. Jake stood on the bridge of the Pioneer's Heart, watching the other ships take their positions in formation. The Crystal Dawn flew alongside the Iron Thunder, former enemies now traveling together toward human space. The Logic Prime coordinated navigation for the entire group, its advanced computers plotting the safest course through hyperspace. Commander Zektar appeared on the communication screen from the Iron Thunder. "Captain Morrison, I owe you an apology. I said your plan was impossible. I was wrong." "We were all wrong about a lot of things," Jake replied. "Maybe that's what we needed to learn." The small fleet jumped to hyperspace together, carrying survivors who had experienced something their civilizations never taught them. They had learned that cooperation was not just possible between different species, but that it made them all stronger than they had been alone. Earth Station Alpha had never seen anything like it. The massive space station orbited Earth at the edge of human territory, serving as the first stop for all ships entering or leaving human space. It was designed to handle maybe 50 vessels at a time. Today, it faced the arrival of a mixed fleet carrying news that would change everything. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Pioneer's Heart as his small fleet dropped out of hyperspace. Behind him flew the Crystal Dawn, Iron Thunder, Logic Prime, and 2 other repaired alien vessels. Each ship carried survivors from 3 different species, all of them witnesses to humanity's first act on the galactic stage. Admiral Sarah Carter commanded Earth Station Alpha. She was a veteran officer who had spent 30 years managing peaceful first contact protocols. But those protocols assumed first contact would happen under controlled conditions with proper diplomatic preparation. No one had planned for this. "Pioneer's Heart, this is Earth Station Alpha." Admiral Carter's voice came through the communication system. "Captain Morrison, please explain why you have 5 unidentified alien vessels in human space." Jake looked around his bridge. Human and alien crew members worked side by side at every station. Commander Zektar stood next to Navigation Officer Ryan Cooper, helping plot their approach to the station. Dr. Lisa Bennett was training a Velthari healer in human medical procedures. The bridge represented something that had never existed before in galactic history. Admiral Carter, requesting permission to dock. "We are carrying refugees from a major battle. These people need medical attention and humanitarian assistance. We also have critical intelligence about a threat to human space." There was a long pause before Admiral Carter responded. "Captain, you are ordered to maintain your current position while we sort this out. Do not approach the station until further notice." Jake understood the Admiral's caution, but he also knew they did not have time for lengthy diplomatic procedures. The silence was still moving toward human territory, and Earth needed to know what was coming. "Admiral, with respect, we have been traveling together for 3 weeks. These aliens are not a threat. They are refugees who need help. And the intelligence we carry could save millions of human lives." Commander Zektar stepped forward. "Captain Morrison, may I speak with your Admiral?" Jake nodded and opened the communication channel. Zektar looked directly into the camera, his reptilian features showing dignity despite his recent ordeal. "Admiral Carter of the human fleet," Zektar said through the translator. "I am Commander Zektar of the Hegemony military. 3 weeks ago, I was left to die in space after the worst military defeat in galactic history. Your Captain Morrison saved my life and the lives of nearly 2,000 other beings. He did this knowing nothing about us, expecting nothing in return." The communication channel was silent for a moment. When Admiral Carter responded, her voice was softer. "Commander Zektar, what kind of threat are we dealing with?" "An enemy called the Silence. They destroyed 800 ships in a single battle. They are moving toward your territory now. Captain Morrison carries the only intelligence about their capabilities and tactics. This information could be the difference between survival and extinction for your species." Within an hour, the mixed fleet was docking at Earth Station Alpha. The station's personnel worked frantically to accommodate alien visitors who needed different atmospheres, food, and medical care. Dr. Bennett coordinated with Earth's medical teams to treat injured survivors while learning everything possible about alien biology. The real impact came when the survivors began telling their stories to Earth's military leaders. Commander Zektar testified before an emergency session of Earth's Defense Council, describing the Silence's overwhelming technological superiority and their deliberate cruelty toward defeated enemies. Lithara provided detailed analysis of the enemy's movement patterns and tactical preferences. Unit 7749 shared technical data about the alien weapons and defensive systems that had failed against the Silence. Together, the testimonies painted a picture of an enemy unlike anything humanity had imagined. But the survivors brought more than just intelligence. They brought something much more valuable. Admiral Carter met with Jake in his quarters 3 days after their arrival. She looked tired but determined. "Captain, your refugee fleet has created a diplomatic revolution. The Velthari Empire Nexus Collective and Korth Dominion have all sent representatives to Earth. They want to discuss forming an alliance." Jake was surprised. "Based on what? We're just explorers. We don't have the military strength to help them fight the Silence." "That's not what they want from us," Admiral Carter explained. "Commander Zektar has been talking to their governments. He told them about something they had never seen before. He told them about humans who risked their lives to save strangers, about mixed crews working together as equals, about species cooperating instead of competing. The alliance negotiations took place in Earth's capital city. Representatives from 4 different species sat around the same table, trying to create something that had never existed in galactic history. Not a military pact based on shared enemies, but a true partnership based on shared values. Commander Zektar served as humanity's strongest advocate among the alien representatives. "The humans showed us a different way of thinking," he told the assembled diplomats. "They do not see some lives as more valuable than others. They do not abandon the wounded. They do not accept that some people must die so others can live." The formal alliance took months to negotiate, but the real work began immediately. Mixed crews trained together on human and alien ships. Scientists shared technology and knowledge. Military strategists developed new tactics based on cooperation instead of competition. When the Silence finally reached the edge of human space 6 months later, they found something they had never encountered before. Instead of scattered competing civilizations fighting alone, they faced a unified force that fought for every life. The first battle took place near the human colony of New Haven. The combined defense fleet met the Silence with ships from 4 different species crewed by mixed teams trained in human rescue protocols. When the enemy disabled human vessels, alien ships moved in to evacuate survivors. When alien ships were damaged, human crews risked themselves to provide assistance. The Silence had always won by dividing their enemies, making each species focus on their own survival. But this new alliance refused to be divided. They fought not just to win, but to save everyone they could. Jake Morrison, now Admiral Morrison, commanded the defense fleet from the bridge of a new ship called the Unity. Around him worked humans, Velthari, Nexus, and Korth officers as a single crew. When reports came in of ships in distress, regardless of species, the response was always the same. "This is Admiral Morrison of the Combined Defense Fleet. We heard you calling. We're coming to get you home."